Hello, and welcome to another episode of Piano TV. Today, I want to go off the rails a little bit and talk about another subject that's near and dear to my heart. So I really like history and music theory, and what we're going to talk about today is harmony. And this is going to be an introductory level video, so even if you're a beginner, this should still make sense. And if you've been playing for a while, this should be useful too. What we're going to do is we're just going to talk about harmony in a broad sense and how composers choose notes to harmonize their melodies. And we'll throw a little bit of history in there, and because history is always fun. So let's get started. So before we get into it, I want to recap a couple concepts just to make sure we're speaking the same language. So melody is the word that you use to describe the singing line or the main tune of a song, whereas the harmony is all the notes or music that backs up or that supports that melody line. So as a really basic example, here's just a little bit of Mary Had a Little Lamb, and what I'm going to do is the right hand's going to be the melody, the tune you sing, and the left hand would be the harmony, the chords, the harmony that supports it. Neither part sounds quite complete on its own. So if I'm just playing the chords, you can't tell what song it is just from the chords, but if I play only the melody, it's not quite complete either. So melody and harmony really do need each other to create like a full picture of sound. Yes, imagine that, a picture of sound. The other concept that we need to review really quick here are intervals. So if you remember, intervals are the distance between two notes. So say for example, C and D, they're right beside each other. So that would be an interval of a second because there's two notes involved. An interval of a third would be C to E because there's three notes involved. This is a fourth, this is a fifth, and intervals can be played broken, like one note at a time, or they can be played blocked at the same time like that. So just for reference, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth. You could keep going with that, but my hands aren't that big. So basically, when you're harmonizing a melody, you're just adding extra notes to, fill in some of the gaps and make it sound a little bit more interesting. And composers will sometimes harmonize an entire melody, like note for note. Sometimes harmony is just added sparingly. So we'll go back to our Mary Had a Little Lamb example and try that out. And here's Mary Had a Little Lamb with thirds. I'm going to do it sparingly, just decorative amounts of thirds for harmony. So that's what that sounds like, and it sounds pretty nice, doesn't it? So now I'm going to do another version, same melody. I'm just going to make every note have a third, have a harmony. The song starts transforming. Now just from adding those few notes, the song immediately sounds fancier, so that's fun, hey? So the question is, how do you decide which notes to add to harmonize a melody? I think this is our perfect segue into music history. In the Middle Ages, most Western music was of a religious nature, and you've probably heard of Gregorian chant, which was the dominant type of music, religious sacred music. Gregorian chant, it had different names depending on what region you were in, but that's what most people tend to be familiar with. And all it is, it started out as just straight up a cappella music because they didn't use instruments because the church didn't think instruments were holy enough to be allowed in the church. So it started off as just like a single melody line, kind of like if we were just to go back to the Mary Had a Little Lamb example, da 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 da, just playing the single note. Eventually, they started getting crazy and doing octave doubling, where they had maybe like a young boy sing a higher pitch, and then an octave below that, they'd have like a grown man, then you have the contrast in high and low sound, but still the same note. But then things got even crazier, and harmony started happening. A common type of harmony that Gregorian chant used was intervals of fourths and fifths moving in unison. So this harmony sounds really strange in our day and age, and it's not really commonly used unless you're listening to some different branches of heavy metal. And yeah, it's a little creepy sounding. I'm gonna play a little bit of Mary Had a Little Lamb in fifths just so you can see what I'm talking about. It's very dissonant, and here's what it would sound like in fourths. Very similar, isn't it? If you're curious more about this kind of like ominous use of fourths and fifths as harmony, you can go on YouTube and look up Gregorian chants, and you can hear the vocal aspect of it. It's actually really, really cool. Somewhere along the way, people started getting more adventurous with their harmonic choices and began to move away from just using fourths and fifths and octaves, and started incorporating thirds and sixths into their harmony repertoire. So thirds, I already showed you a little bit earlier. They sound like this. They're very pleasant, and sixths kind of have a similar sound to them. They're very nice. If I was to play a little bit of Mary Had a Little Lamb in sixths, I'm just going to use two hands. Nice, isn't it? You'll come across these intervals and melodies all over the place, including my arrangement of Brahms' Lullaby, which we looked at in the last video. So insert link here, you can check that out. Now, whether you're playing in a minor key or a major key, it doesn't really matter, because these same harmony rules apply. Thirds and sixths in a minor key still sound really good. So just a little example of that. I mean, it's a completely different song. It's not Mary Had a Little Lamb anymore, but it's still a nice sounding harmony. Or a sixth would be like this. The only intervals we haven't really talked about to use for harmony are seconds and sevenths. So they're really strange to use on their own. Like if you're trying to do Mary Had a Little Lamb in seconds, sounds like garbage, unless you're into making that kind of abstract music, and that's fine. So generally you won't use harmonies of seconds or sevenths very often, unless, and this is the exception, that interval is passing to a more pleasant interval. So sometimes they're just used as passing tones, but you wouldn't just use a bunch of sevenths back to back, because it's just way too odd to the ear. Now, to show you how to apply this knowledge, I'm just going to pull a few random and famous tunes out of my head. So how about Ode to Joy? So that's what Ode to Joy sounds like with a single melody note. So what I'm going to do is a harmonized version of this in third. So let's see what that sounds like. Notice that sneaky little fifth I did at the end there, just to switch it up. So fifths and fourths aren't good to use just solely on their own, but they do have their place in it's kind of like salt, I guess. You don't just want to dump a whole bunch of salt in. Why am I thinking about food right now? You get what I'm saying, right? And here's Frere Jacques. I'm just going to play this one in sixths, and let's see what that sounds like. So that's kind of nice, and then maybe I could change it to thirds, or even have a fourth in there. So that's just how I would start incorporating this knowledge of harmony. When I'm harmonizing something, I'll generally think about thirds and sixths, maybe like throw in a little sprinkle, maybe like a fourth or fifth here and there, but for the most part, harmony is often going to be based around those thirds and those sixths. And just one last quick note, you probably already noticed me doing this, but I almost always put the melody note on top, with the harmony note on the bottom, like my melody is da da da, is that top note, because it just helps the melody ring through more clearly. If you put the harmony note above the melody can sometimes get just what's the word for blurry? You can't hear it. Quiet. It gets quiet. It gets muddled out. Okay, I'll just show you what that sounds like with Mary Had a Little Lamb. It kind of takes your ear to the highest tone, which is now this, which isn't the tune of Mary Had a Little Lamb. So I find doing harmony above the melody can be really distracting. In most cases, it's not a rule, but it's just what I usually prefer. So I hope you found this video at least a little bit useful, and maybe found some nuggets of information that you can apply into your practice, or even just to have deepened your understanding of harmony and why composers choose what they do in music. If you want to keep up to date, be sure to subscribe and check out the blog pianotv.net, where I put this video stuff there, and I also put blog posts from time to time, so check that out. Thank you very much, and catch you later. I do this a lot at the end, don't I? I don't know why. Peace.